today's Suddenly Single is going out on the 11th of November, which is a very special day. It's a Remembrance Day. And I have with me a soldier, Jamie Hull, who will be at the cenotaph today. And I'm just going to ask him about his life. He's a man who's served and fought for his country and sacrificed a lot for his country, and he's currently single. So I thought you would be a brilliant guest to have on the show today. Just wanna get out of here. Jamie, you are a former soldier in the Special Forces. Do you want to tell me, first of all, growing up, you grew up quite near where I live in Leighton Buzzard, which is a small market town, right? Do you have brothers and sisters, and what was your childhood like? When did you decide to join the forces?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite fortunate looking back. I mean, Leighton Buzzard, Bedfordshire, small market town. It was pretty quiet when I grew up. So I've got some pretty strong memories of being that young, wild sort of tearaway. And I'm on my sort of little BMX bike and I'm skirting around the town and the fringes. But it was a good childhood, really. I mean, I got to play out and, woodland and explore in the way that a lot of children perhaps aren't so fortunate within sort of inner city upbringings.
Yeah.
So looking back, it was a quieter world when I grew up, and I had some great opportunities as a youngster in that environment.
Well, I think you were younger than me, but I don't think we didn't have mobile phones, or
No.
There was no scrolling, no game playing on your little computer, so you had to get out really on your bike, didn't you?
I did, and I was wild. I was always out exploring in nature and enjoying, getting to the park with friends and kicking a football around. And I'd love to, like I mentioned, the woods, and get to the woods and climb trees and run and jump and do all these things. And I'm in London now. I'm based in London, but I often feel a little bit sorry for younger children growing up here because they wouldn't have had the opportunities that I had, certainly. And there's a lot to be said for that, to sort of grow up in an area of sort of countryside and nature. And that was what I remember of the town back then. It's changed. It's like the world's got busier, and the southeast of England, certainly.
What age did you decide to join the army?
So the army was not something that I really entertained or envisaged. I didn't think that I'd necessarily, grow up thinking, I'm going to join the army, that's what I want to do. But I definitely had an underlying interest in the forces. Mm-hmm. I did consider it at quite a young age, about 19. But I had an underlying passion also burning away that I wanted to travel and see the world. And quite young, so I was just 21 when I did that. In fact, no, tell a lie, 20. I was very young. So I literally saved up some pennies doing some part-time jobs, etc., growing up, and put my money where my mouth was, and I got a ticket from Trailfinders here in London, and I went off around the world on a round-the-world ticket, all over. So I went from London to Johannesburg, spent time in Southern Africa, from South Africa as far as Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, and then I went to Australasia, New Zealand, Fiji, Hawaii, then across North America. So I did that very young. So the forces idea was kind of put on hold, and then just briefly I served a career, actually, don't hold it against me, but with a UK police force constabulary with Thames Valley Police.
So I do not hold it against you. My son-in-law is a policeman.
Yeah, so I did that, Milton Keynes, Oxford, Aylesbury, Buckingham, and I was a busy guy, Frontline, rotational sort of shift patterns, sort of chasing the 999s, very busy in those areas, in Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, Berkshire. But there was also a passion to kind of get back to my interests, and my interests had developed when I'd been off around the world previously. So what I didn't mention was I became a diver professionally. I became an instructor out in Australia, and I kind of wanted to get back to some of that. So I applied to take a sabbatical, a career break, and I went off to work actually in places such as the Caribbean, in Egypt, in several locations in and around the Red Sea. I also went to the Philippines to run a big scuba diving project over there. And so my journey took me far and wide on the sabbatical. And then it was at that point when I thought, well, actually, I shouldn't just spend these years just, swanning it around, scuba diving around the planet, even though I had a wonderful time. But I chose to go off to university and do some higher education. So I went to a languages degree, and I found myself joining the Cambridge University Officer Training Corps.
Mm-hmm.
This was the army at university, so it was an offering where I could go along and train on the weekends, and I was, doing sort of army stuff on the weekends and actually getting paid for it, which was helping me sustain myself financially through my time at university on the course. And it was at that point when I developed the interest, and I thought, wow, this is something that I really enjoy. I found that when I was doing some tough stuff that was on offer, a lot of the viewers may never have heard of it, but I did things such as Cambrian Patrol in the Welsh mountains. And they were tough. They were grueling patrol competitions. I was part of an 8-man team, and we're in deepest sort of damp Wales around this time of year, sort of November.
Yeah.
And the weather is bad. It's windy, there's horizontal rain coming in. I'm carrying a lot of weight on my back. I'm trudging through the mud and the rivers and the streams, and I'm having to just, circumnavigate sort of 50 kilometres. So I found that when the going got tough, something within me kind of ignited, and I had a passion, and I really enjoyed that somehow. And it was weird because I didn't necessarily know that before, and that drove me on. So then I had opportunities to do some more stuff that really challenged me. And for example, I went to Royal Military Academy Sandhurst to do the commissioning process. I had an opportunity to do P Company. So it was a pre-parachute regiment selection for airborne forces. And I surprised myself because full-time course up at Catterick, and I got through the process. But I was black and blue by the end of it, literally. But again, something kept spurring me on. I was driven for this kind of work. And then beyond that, I had an opportunity, and I think it was recommended by my commanding officer at the time, to do a selection trial for what they call UK Special Forces. And that's kind of how it happened. So I then embarked on like a 13-month training program, quite a long haul. And I didn't come through unscathed once again, because there's a lot of challenge involved, and you have to really be super hungry for the process. You have to kind of really want to achieve that and hang on in there. And again, something about me, I guess the analogy would be that I've often used, you see one of these terriers with the owner, and he's got that little rope, and he pulls the rope up in the air, and the terrier's still hanging on. And yet the terrier is now swinging sort of airborne.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I was. I was like the little terrier just hanging on to try to get through the process. And at the end of 13 months, I surprised myself, and I did get badged into a unit with UK Special Forces.
And at that point, were you sent to Florida to learn to fly?
So yeah, just for the record, the ambition to fly was a personal endeavour. And it was a personal interest, and I was inspired by my late grandfather who trained and flew as a pilot with the Royal Air Force. So when I grew up as a youngster, he very much inspired me about sort of all things aviation, aeronautical. He was an engineer by trade with British Aerospace Engineering, and that was kind of where the interest came from a young age. And so growing up, I thought one day I'd like to do this. Just a case of getting round to it, and obviously there was some financial input at stake. So when I got to a point in life where I thought this is something I'd like to do, and it was the summer of 2007. So I had a bit of downtime, and at this stage I was working on the squadron. With my unit with the army, and I was actually just about to go to a tasking in the Middle East at the time, but I chose to fulfill a short window to execute the ambition to learn to fly. So I went out to Florida. I chose Florida specifically because of great weather, the chance of getting the training done in a relatively short time frame, and And I was doing the business, so I'm flying a light plane, a single engine piston light aircraft. And on a one particular day, on an afternoon flight of the 19th of August 2007, unfortunately, I was faced with a dire situation in the air. So I had an engine fire where the fire emanated from the front portion of the fuselage. So I'd noticed that outside the left-hand canopy window, flame sort of originating from the front of the aircraft. And no sooner as I made a couple of turns, sort of left banking and now into wind for my final approach, the fire breached the cockpit internally. And I was then struck in the moment with a situation in the cockpit where the fire breached, and I had flames sort of building up around my feet and ankles, and then it's slowly building up around my lower limbs. And the problem being, in that tiny little two-seater cockpit, and I'm in the left-hand seat, the flame is building up. I'm only wearing shorts to the knee and a thin sort of T-shirt and shoes and socks, because I'm working in Florida, the heat, the humidity, and that was effectively the mistake that I'd made as a pilot sort of working out there. So my lower limbs were getting burned as I'm bringing the aircraft in towards the landing zone. And in the action of the descent, the fire was building, and I had to make a decision about what I was going to do. Was I going to try to land it in the normal conventional sense, or the option for me, which I came up with in the decision making, was actually that I'm going to veer away towards some grass to my left, away from the concrete runway in the distance, because it afforded me a potentially softer landing. And as I did so, I followed the emergency protocol for that type of aircraft as I'd been taught. So I followed the protocol to shut down everything, so turn the key to the ignition off, all the instrumentation and controls, including the fuel pump. And at a very low level, I was able to remove my headset, throw that in the opposite footwell. I unbuckled the three-point harness over my waist and shoulders, and I was able to open the left-hand canopy door before judging it just purely by sort of hand-eye coordination in the last moments. So sort of 50 feet, 40 feet, 30 feet, and approximately 20 feet. Having opened the door, I clambered onto the seat, then onto the left wing, balanced momentarily, and then I jumped off the back of the left wing. So a very hasty sort of stunt that I pulled off, if you will. And the motivation was the fact that in those last moments, the cockpit was a blazing inferno. So I had flames literally lapping my face, my neck, my scalp.
Did you feel anything?
Not initially, not
shock?
within the cockpit. So there was some positive through draft because of some ventilation ducts, but the damage was being done. And then I got onto that wing that I described and balanced momentarily, and I actually got the backwash of the propeller. So the wind from the back of the prop was sort of fanning my right side as I turned to the left onto the wing before I actually jumped. It fanned me all the way down the right side with the wind, and I got this quite predominant right side dominant burn, and it wasn't until I landed feet first. So I estimate that she was still dropping in the glide. So I estimate that I was approximately 15 feet above the grass and gliding in at about 30 knots, which is around 33 miles per hour.
Okay.
And I got away with that by the skin of my teeth. So I landed, I then thrust forwards. From landing feet first, I then face sort of planted the grass. I had a bilateral nasal fracture, supraorbital eye socket fractures. I tore through the right side of the nose, through the lip here. 2 ribs were fractured, my clavicle, collarbone, my left index finger, hyperextended and fractured. I ruptured my colon and I lacerated my liver. But the worst of it was, on top of internal injuries, multiple fractures, so I was 63% third degree burns of total body surface area.
Is it right they gave you a 5% chance of survival?
Yeah, they did. So medics picked me up from the scene. I had a major sort of emergency medical response at the scene with police, fire engines, ambulance. They transported me a short distance, having given me some morphine, and I was in incredible pain at that
You
point.
were, even with
pain.
morphine.
Yeah, the pain sort of had hit me on the ground, as you asked the question, you know, not really in the cockpit, but on the ground once the sort of adrenaline had dropped off. That's when it dawned on me, and the pain hit me like a giant tsunami. And then I was moved by ambulance a short distance. There was a waiting helicopter, and then I distinctly remember a doctor in the back of the helicopter questioning me and asking me to confirm name, date of birth. Question number 3, do you have an insurance policy? And
Wow.
I distinctly remember that even to this day. And
A very American question.
it really was. And I guess you can understand, to give you an idea of how bad it was, the bill in the US came to just shy of 2.8 million US dollars for my reconstruction. And I guess saving my life as well. So I was airlifted from the scene with a waiting helicopter and transported probably 20-25 minutes through Orlando airspace. And the rest is history. The doctors quickly assessed me. Based on the injury assessment they gave me, as you mentioned, just a 5% probability of survival. And honestly, how I pulled through, I do not know. But I can only put it down to 3 things. So, 1, a rapid emergency medical response within that golden hour. 2, probably the best trauma facility in the world, Orlando Regional Health. 3, I was in tremendous condition, great shape, because I was a runner. And even the night before, I was out doing a 10-kilometer run with a couple of the guys from the flight centre that I was doing some work with there, and we were out, you know, just having some fun, doing some running, and I used to enjoy that. You know, I used to always train and enjoy the physicality, and it was great conditioning for my heart and lungs. So what I'm suggesting is I was in great shape at the time, and that gave me the fighting edge when it happened. And without that, I probably would not have survived, given the bleak injury assessment that I had and that 5% probability.
I mean, you did eventually come back to England, but before then, when you were in America, you were in a relationship, an on-off relationship, weren't you? A long-distance relationship with someone from Canada?
I was, yeah. So we'd seen each other quite a bit, and we'd travelled fairly extensively as well. I'd been out to Asia, and we'd done trips in sort of Borneo, in Egypt, and even interrailing around the whole of Europe. And we'd known each other for a while. It was a little bit on and off because of the nature of what I did at the time with the army, and I was kind of here, there, and all over the shop really for about 5 years, certainly with the Special Forces kind of squadron that I did some work with, and I was an active guy, you know. I was kind of all over the place, and I enjoyed my expeditions, I enjoyed my scuba diving. So I think I was probably a bit guilty of not really allowing myself to sort of settle at that time, which is something that I probably...
You were 32?
I was. I just turned 32 at the time.
I think that's younger for men than it is for women.
Yeah, and you know, when you're at that age and you're in the cut and thrust of doing what I was doing at the time, you know, I wasn't really so concerned about relationships or sort of long-term, you know, sort of settling down.
Yeah.
It wasn't until perhaps I got a bit older that I started to sort of consider that and think about it. But you know, I was too busy enjoying the moment, you know, and doing what I was doing.
You lived over it a bit, but you had 67 operations in 7 years, right?
Close. I actually had 64 under general anaesthetic. So meaning that medics, both in the US, because I was 6 months drug-induced in Florida, to preserve the... I guess the emotional and mental integrity of what I was going through, so that I didn't suffer too much. Yeah. Remember, in the subconscious setting, I'm fighting for my every fibre for those 6 months, but I was drug-induced.
Yeah. That's a soldier's mentality, I think.
I have to be, looking back and sort of, I guess, analysing what I went through and in hindsight. And... Yes, I went through 64 ops both in the US and in the UK. So I went through so many surgeries. They put me to sleep 64 times, but that was over a period of the first 7 years. So human donor skin, pig skin, synthetic skin, my own skin. When I say my own skin, so
Well, you have quite
they
badly
call it
burned.
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Okay.
So they stripped like sections that were viable. In my case, like my thighs were pretty good
Okay.
because I had those good stout sort of gentleman's
Army runners'
cargo
legs.
shorts to the knee in Florida, so my upper limbs didn't get damaged, and
Okay.
which is good to know.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
none of that area got damaged. But they had to strip my thighs, the backs of my legs as well. They stripped some areas of my back, which was still good, and some aspects of my torso where they could take skin from that was strong and viable. But literally, they will take the skin, they'll punch holes in it.
Yeah.
That's kind of perforating it, and they'll stretch it out.
Yeah.
And that way they can turn a piece of, say, 4 by 4 centimetre into, figuratively, 6 by 6. And they can get greater cover, if you understand,
Yes.
with the nature of the skin grafts.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you get cover and as a surgeon
Yeah.
and support somebody that's subject to a 63% third degree
Yes.
over total body
Yeah.
surface area.
Yeah.
So they take strips, they perforate it, they stretch it out, and it's incredible. And that's what they did for me multiple times over.
I mean, you and I met via a friend of mine called Dr. Arma Khan, who runs a charity called Back on Track. And they help a lot. He does a lot of work with soldiers who've had burns, accidents. What did they do for you? Because is that more recently?
Yeah, it was a lot more recently, actually. But I've known Dr. Arma Khan and his wife Leslie that run Harley Street Skin Clinic.
Yeah.
And they have an organisation that's kind of linked to that called the Back on Track.
Yeah.
It's a small charity, and
Yeah.
they support veterans. So it was some fellow veterans that invited me to come and speak to Dr. Arma. And he sort of did a chat with me and a big assessment. And he just said to me, look, we can do things that would help with the quality of your skin. So it wasn't so much the big procedures that I described regarding skin grafts and all of those, larger kind of processes that I went through, of which there were many. There were orthopedic stuff that I had to go through as well. But that journey finished much more earlier on.
You've written a book called Life on a Thread. And on the picture on the front of that book is how you looked before your accident. Now, is that a difficult thing to look in the mirror and see a different face?
I think that in the early years, I did grieve an aspect of the old me, what I called the sort of version 1.0 Jamie Hull. Because you don't go through something like that and, in all sincerity, not really consider what you've lost. I mean, surgeons were forced to or compelled to cut off and snip off aspects of my ears because they were so badly damaged because it was kind of peripheral with the burn, and it was subject to the larger sort of extent of the burn. And also you can see I lost a bit of hair. But as I've kind of matured, I realised that the looks are not so tremendously important in life. I mean, I don't mind a few battle scars. I can kind of live with that. The main thing is that I'm still here, kind of able to live a relatively active life and cut around and get on with it. But certainly in the earlier years as a younger guy, because remember I was just 32 when it happened,
Yes.
a few years have marched on. But at that time I did grieve and I did consider it. And I did absolutely wholeheartedly think, my God, it happened to me, poor me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that it took me about 3 years to physically heal with the early stages of my time in hospital and originally getting home and the recovery.
Yeah.
But I would also suggest it probably took me 5 years to mentally accept that and to recover.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal, like 5 years of process and acceptance. But eventually, I got there, and in that sense, I don't really look back anymore.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, it's not really so important like the vanity for me.
Yeah.
Although, I like to maintain myself, and I do that to quite a high level because it's in my blood, it's in my nature. Being a former soldier, particularly with the line that I worked in with the UKSF, I enjoy physicality, I enjoy movement. So that's super important. And I think that generally helps me to always feel better about myself in terms of confidence, self-esteem. So these things help. And people can get, especially in this day and age, there's so much media, particularly social media, and there's a lot of beauty and there's a lot of vanity, perhaps there's a lot of expectation. So people can get hung up on that. But I don't think that that people should really be obsessed by all of that and be sort of sucked along with that sort of that narrative of beauty and vanity.
I mean, we've met a few times, but the last time I met you was last week, I think, and we were at a ball together, or certainly a party. And I did notice that about you. You are extremely confident. You don't have any problem getting up on a mic, and you're a motivational speaker these days, aren't you?
Yeah, I do bits and pieces motivational speaking. So that generally started because in the early years I was a beneficiary of Help for Heroes as a charity.
Yeah.
So they supported me, and I did a couple of expeditions. For example, I trained as a bobsled pilot in Utah, and I did some crazy things as well, like on a bicycle. We did race across America, and I was part of an 8-man team. So I was inspired by all of that, and then following some of these events, I did London Marathon. I climbed Kilimanjaro, and I learned more about myself and what it is to kind of use my body once again and test myself and challenge myself, really, that I felt like I wanted to become an ambassador and a spokesperson, if you will, for the charity. So I started going out and doing a few talks and representing the charity. I talked to small businesses, schools, some corporate companies. And on the back of that, I think that developed, and I started getting more demand to do some speaking. So I do a bit of that on the side, even to this day. And I think in general, sharing my story not only helped me in the early years, but I hope that it would give a little bit of hope to others that may be suffering or maybe going through grief or adversity in their own lives.
Yeah.
And I think some people can get something out of that. So my own confidence just developed over time. I mean, I think I was generally a confident guy before. I did lose it for a period, though. It goes without saying.
Yeah,
you remember that 5 years of sort of process and acceptance? So I was very forlorn for a period and down in the sort of doldrums. And at one stage I did even consider checking out because it was that bad. So I'm talking about the very early years when I was in the hospital. So because I was suffering so much with open wounds and infection and so on and so forth. But
so
fortunately,
the physical pain of what you were going through made you actually think
I had
about
pain off the charts in the beginning, and some processes that I went through in the hospital that frankly I would not wish upon the enemy. And that's saying something as an ex-soldier. So yeah, I really did suffer in the early years, but fortunately I was able to kind of crawl back from that dark period, and with a lot of help from the medics and the surgeons and family and friends at the time, that I was lucky that I was able to sort of bounce back and then go on to live sort of an active existence. And so it was important for me to get back to that active life, but it was important to perhaps get out there and share the story. And I realised that there was a little bit of power in that, because if I could share it in a positive sense, I could give a little bit of hope to others that I mention. And I think people do hopefully feel somewhat inspired by my journey. And if I can make it, if I can pull through from this, then in the sense, I always say to people, at my bottom line, with great will and determination, we can overcome life's great obstacles. We just have to be super hungry for a process. And the question for people out there is, how hungry for a process are you? So I use this as an analogy, and I say, look, I can example some of what I went through in my former life. Remember that version 1.0 as a younger soldier, and I can talk about P Company for the Parachute Regiment. I can talk about selection for UK Special Forces and some of the endeavours that I pursued, but it paled into insignificance in terms of the absolute fight of my life when effectively I was struck down with major third-degree burns.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey was years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 years of hospitalisation. And if I can bounce back from that
Mm-hmm.
and then go on to live a relatively active life, it might not be the same,
Mm-hmm.
but relatively active all the same, and enjoy what I do, the sort of day-to-day, the activity, and just getting out there, meeting people, conversing, and you know, sharing life once again, then hopefully there's a little bit of hope for some others that might be in some darker aspects of their own sort of life journey.
And you admitted that in the beginning you think part of the reason your relationship at the time didn't work was because you had not spent an awful lot of time with her over those 5 years, and maybe had some other ladies, Jamie, a few other ladies. So that didn't work, and then you came home. But I do know that you have had girlfriends since then, because it's only quite recently that you split up from someone, isn't it?
Yeah, I've had a couple of relationships. Again, I'm probably a bit guilty because it's not that I...
You like long distance.
It's not that I absolutely desire long distance. I have not minded that. It's just that part of my journey a few years ago, I was kind of fulfilling a dream within my diving organisation. So I work with an American organisation actually called PADI, which is Professional Association of Diving Instructors. And my journey actually took me to sort of climb to the top of the tree as an instructor, and I became a PADI course director. So I was actually training and prepping for that. And I ended up in a small island called Koh Tao in Thailand.
Okay.
And so I was there for quite a long period, about 6 months. And I ended up in a relationship with a lovely young Thai girl at the time. But again, the distance was very hard. When I was back in the UK, it was tremendously difficult. And that sort of gently sort of phased out. Not that I necessarily wanted it to, but just distance is difficult. And I also had a relationship with a girl in the Netherlands, but it was tricky because she had, a child at the time, and I'm definitely open to, sort of dating more locally and being British and everything. It doesn't faze me. But I do travel a little bit by nature of my interest. So
Yeah.
I'm a very passionate diver, so I love to get away diving in the tropics.
Yeah.
I've been involved in a couple of sort of veterans trips where I've been away skiing and that kind of thing. But I do spend the majority of my time these days in the UK. So I consider myself more kind of regular life.
So you would be open to somebody in the UK?
Certainly, yeah, absolutely.
And would you try an app? Would you go on an app, a dating app, or you're much more organic?
Yeah, I would absolutely. Yeah, if I
haven't yet.
if I kind of learned about
how to do it,
opportunities with apps and that, I might consider that as well. Certainly.
Okay.
I'm very fortunate to be part of like multiple networks, such as we mentioned Back on Track with the Harley Street Skiing Clinic. I'm an ambassador sort of nationally for Help for Heroes. Mm-hmm. I'm an associate member of the charity Blesma, which is a very old charity since World War One.
Oh, what's Blesma?
Blesma is the British Limbless Ex-Servicemen's Association.
Okay.
So I'm not actually limbless, but I had a little bit of sort of nerve damage from surgery on my lower limb. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I'm sort of fit and healthy. But I'm very fortunate to be a beneficiary of Blesma. And I've been away skiing. I've done horse riding in Arizona, which is insane, because I rode a Mustang in the mountains of deepest Arizona. I've been away scuba diving with them more recently in the Red Sea in Egypt. I've had some wonderful opportunities, including skydiving in California. So,
have you done that?
Yeah, I've done all of that since. So
wow.
I was a military parachutist by virtue of what I did with my unit. But I had an opportunity to do civilian free-fall skydiving in California. And I did a great number of jumps out there. So, I mean, some of these charities, some of these networks have and afford veterans incredible opportunities. You might have heard of Invictus Games.
Yes.
So I was an athlete in London, and I was a track cyclist. I've been away skiing with the Invictus Games program. I recently raced a bicycle across all of Denmark in the summer. So 1,000 kilometres from the north of Denmark, Frederikshavn, to Copenhagen. And listen, the opportunities are there. You don't always get lucky if you apply, but sometimes you get, your name gets drawn from the straws out of a hat or whatever. And I've been very fortunate. I've been a part of a few networks, and I've had some amazing opportunities and tremendous camaraderie between forces personnel.
Yeah.
We have a unique understanding of one another's journey. So I know guys that got hit in a way harder than me, not necessarily with a greater level of suffering in the early stages, but I say they got hit harder. I mean, they lost limbs, in some cases, obviously limb losses for life. And I know guys that have lost, singular limbs, arms or legs, and in some cases plural. So I even know triple amputees that I've met through the forces networks. So 2 legs and an arm. And yet they're incredibly inspiring individuals that have gone on to do incredible challenges themselves, swimming to... one guy even climbed Everest recently that I know, which is just extraordinary given the nature of his limb loss. So, there's a tremendous network, and I would like to think that just because we might have sustained some kind of injury, in my cases it was burns and it's got a visual, but it doesn't mean to say, look, it's the end of the road, and you'd be surprised how that journey can kind of carry you forward. But the motivation is key. If you've got the will and you've got the motivation, that can massively carry you. And I'd like to think that myself and certainly other veterans that I've come across are a strong testimony to that.
And obviously, as I've said to you at the beginning, this is going out on the 11th of November. Is there any message you would like to give to people?
Certainly. So, remembrance. And I would absolutely advocate for remembrance year upon year. It's crucial. It's vital that we do remember, because literally there are, unfathomable numbers of men, women, service personnel in general that went before us. They made sacrifice before us. They fought in the world wars. So they were in obviously World War I, going all the way back, and even beyond that, historically. But we know historically and we know factually that people fought and they suffered in horrific conditions. We all know about the history on the home front and the battlefronts, indeed, with World War I and trench warfare, and what the guys and the support staff went through. And it was absolutely horrendous. And we didn't have all the modern technology that soldiers necessarily have, even the kit that they have nowadays. You think about it, all the warm kit that soldiers are issued with, they didn't even necessarily have that in those days, and yet they were putting themselves in harm's way for a wartime venture which ultimately paved the way for our freedom today. We should never forget that. So I'm thinking about what the men and women that fought, endured and suffered and sacrificed from way back. I'm thinking about World War I, I'm thinking about World War II, and all the recent conflicts from Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, and so on and so forth. And there's guys even now that we don't necessarily, believe me, you don't even necessarily get to hear about it because it's not necessarily publicised. But I can tell you that even comrades of mine from my sort of former network are still on operations overseas in far-flung corners of the world, and putting their life on the line. And obviously from time to time, in some cases, they're sacrificing themselves. So this still goes on in the name of freedom, in the name of what we as a British Commonwealth country support, and indeed what we execute on in this day and age. So yeah, absolutely. Remembrance is all about precisely that, remembering, and to show support and to respect those that have gone before us in the name of supporting this country and the sovereignty and the crown ultimately.
Yeah. Well, Jamie Hull, I would like to thank you on behalf of me and anyone else who's watching for everything you've done for our country and you will continue to do. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
again for coming in.